Recording. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the parable of what if everybody was a robot. That's what we're going for today, and it's going to be really fun and interesting, and I think it's going to help you out a lot. Let me get my camera down just a little bit more there so you can see a little more of me. So this is something I use all the time, and it's something that at first I was just using as a kind of way to trick myself, but now I just believe it's actually true. The statement, what if everybody was just a robot? And so here's what I mean. Whenever I would have to do something in life, whether at work, at the companies I worked at, when I would be really stressed about it, or, any other time when I was worried about people's feelings, I would just always ask myself, I'd just say, okay, I'm just going to pretend for a second that everybody is a robot, that everybody else in the world is a robot. They're not actually a human. They're just a robot. How would I interact with them if I knew they were just a robot? But specifically what I mean is not like a robot that doesn't care what I'm doing. I mean, what if they were a robot programmed to react exactly how a human would react? Okay, I just knew on the inside that they were a robot, and so I couldn't actually hurt their feelings because they're a robot. Now, if I said something mean to them, the robot would be programmed to say something mean back or give me a negative consequence. That's important. But in general, right, it's just a robot. So why do I think this way? Well, I've come to the conclusion that in life, everyone is a robot at first, and life really is a lot like the show Westworld. That's an easy way to think about it if you've seen Westworld. If not, no big deal. But life is a lot like that. It's something where people just respond automatically to things. They think the outside world should make them happy or sad, which makes literally no sense whatsoever. And they also think that they have the ability. We all think we have the ability to hurt other people's feelings when that's not true, okay? The way somebody else reacts is always their choice. And so the way I live life now, the parable or metaphor, whatever, that I think is so interesting, is I just live it like everyone else is a robot. And so what that means is I'm always asking, what are the tangible consequences of me doing something? So give you an example, right? If I want to do something with our money or just something in general that my wife might disapprove of, I think of it like, well, what if she were a wife robot? And, how would I treat this to get the optimal scenario for me? And I'd say, well, I do it this way or that way, But here's the point, right? Here's the point is that when you treat someone else like you can affect their feelings, like your existence can affect their feelings, then, you allow yourself to be mind controlled by other people. And so then we're all in this cycle, this confusion, this mind control scenario where we're all being tricked and we think other people live in our heads. We think we live in other people's heads. And it's just not true. It's not real. It's not how life actually works. So I want you to think on that. Just kind of ruminate on that for a second. And so for me, I've always felt like it was callous or it was rude to treat someone like a robot, to think about them that way. And so I was always afraid of that. But then I realized even that was programming in my head that somebody had put there, programming me like a robot to think that I could affect other people's feelings, okay? And so this stuff comes up all the time, right? Like yesterday, I went to the post office. And at my post office, there's about 7 postal workers that work there. I have to go there about weekly now to ship prints for Prince by Preetha. And so I go there, and there's just one lady, right? There's just one lady who always is kind of mean or she doesn't even seem like a mean lady. She's just she just seems a little grouchy or a little bit, blunt, right? A little bit not smiley. I don't know. She may not even be mean. She actually seems like a fine person. She seems nice, but just blunt. And so I'm always hoping I don't get that one person, right? And so there's a couple interesting dynamics with this whole robot thing that come up when I had that interaction yesterday. So I get to the post office yesterday, and I'm going to mail these prints, and I mail 8.5 by 11 flat mailers and 11 by 17 flat mailers. So what that means, let me scoot over so you can see more of my hand gestures. So what that means is the smaller size, any other post office worker, including when I put it in the mail myself through my own mail slot, I can ship them with 4 stamps for $2, right? And so I can ship those, and then the larger ones that are 11 by 17, I have to take to the post office because they go as packages and they're $4.50. So you might say, Woody, why are you telling me all this? Well, there's this one lady, right? This one lady at the post office, just one, who will not, like I came in one day, and when I handed her this 8.5 by 11, this regular piece of paper size flat mailer, she said, that has to go as a package. That's going to be $4.50. And I said, ma'am, excuse me, but every single other worker in this post office, including the people directly next to you, will ship this for $1.60. So why is it $4.50? And she's like, no, it has to go through the machine this way. It just has to be that way. Okay? And so then I just started shipping them myself in the mail, and I've never had a problem. I've shipped 250 flat mailers so far, and never had a problem with the post office. But this one lady. And so here are the lessons in this, right? First of all, when I go to push for the result I want, which is my postage to cost $1.60 instead of $4.50 for these mailers I send. I had 4 yesterday of this size. When I go to push for that, right, I might feel guilty. Because I could be putting a negative feeling on somebody else, right? Imagine you're the post office worker and somebody comes in and they're like, no, you need to do it my way. You're wrong, And so one thing that thinking about people as robots helps you with is it teaches you that you're not in charge of those feelings. That I'm just another human being walking up to the post office and asking something. I'm never mean about it. I'm just like, hey, why is this? Just so you know, everybody else will ship my thing for $1.60. Literally the people on either side of her will ship it for $1.60, but she won't. And so, I'll say stuff like that, and she'll no, it has to go as a package. No, it has to go as a package. And I used to feel bad about arguing about that, right? I used to feel bad about getting in on that. So when I think about people as robots, I'm like, oh, well, if she wants to feel bad that I'm raising a fuss very politely, then that's her choice, not mine. And so that really helps, right? It's all about the result you want. But what's really interesting is I went back yesterday and I thought, oh, well, it's actually a little cheaper to give them at the post office because instead of $2 of stamps, it's $1.60 actually is how much it actually costs. And I'm always afraid I'm not going to get it exactly right. It might cost $1.80 or something, so I always put $2 of stamps when I put them from home. So I get there, but then the one lady is there yesterday. And I've only had her once before, and I was like, never again. Please just let me run away from that one lady because I don't like making her feel bad arguing about the packages, and I don't want her to make me feel bad giving me a higher price on my packages. And so I just don't want that interaction, right? Nice lady, don't want the interaction. And so I get there, and I'm watching the post office, and there's 2 workers going, and one of them is this mean lady, and the other lady finishes her customer, and I'm next in line, and I'm like, oh, thank gosh, I'm going to get the nice lady. It's all going to work out. It's going to be great. And then the nice lady goes, okay, I got to unload some of these packages. And so she shuts down her thing and starts moving packages behind the counter. And so then she's moving packages behind the counter, and I'm thinking, oh no. And then the next guy finishes, and sure enough, the grouchy lady, the lady who won't ship my packages for the price that's correct brings me forward. And I'm like, oh my God, no, this is going to happen again, right? And so I put my stuff down, right? And I give her my 4 small ones, which are supposed to go for a cheaper price. And she says, those are going to have to go as packages, right? And this is where I, again, used the robot mentality, okay? Thinking about what are the actual consequences, right? Step 0 would be to get angry and emotional. And this is what you got to understand is when you feel infringed upon, that's when you attack back, okay? And so the thing most people would do, right, if they didn't have robot mentality, if they didn't have this mentality of other people are responsible for their own mental health, if they didn't have that, then the first thing people would do is they would feel bad because they have to fight about this. And then if I felt bad because I have to fight about it, I would be mean at her, and then she would feel bad, and then we'd get into a fight about it. And just so you know, I just solved all of human conflict for you. That's how it happens, right? It's all about insecurities. And if you want to understand that better, just read Love is Letting Go of Fear by Gerald Jempovsky, whatever his name is. Wonderful book. And he says that everything, even attack thoughts, are just requests for love. And so, when I feel bad, I might make a request for love in the form of an attack, and she might attack back. And really, we both just want love and significance, but we're both attacking each other. Why would we do that? I don't know. Anyway, so that layer 1 would have been me having an actual fight. But I've solved that, right? I'm like, no, I know how to request politely and be super nice, and I'm over it, and I'm over the fact that I need to have an emotional reaction. I'll just gently ask. But here's the other thing, is that if I gently ask, right, I'm going to have to go through all this steps of, arguing with her still, even if it's nicely, talking about it, figuring it out, right? Or if she won't agree with me, I might have to take my packages back, and I might have to take those envelopes and take them home and mail them myself so that I can save, the $2.50 per package. So I would have saved $10, right? But then I thought, again in robot mind, just in robot mind, right? I'm in control of my own emotions, okay? Like, if I had no shame about this, if everyone else was a robot, would there be a problem with just letting her ship these as packages and losing $10? Like, what is that $10 going to mean to my life, right? And the answer is nothing. Maybe they can use that $10 to pay a USPS worker $10 more. I mean, I don't know. This goes into some government coffer somewhere. But I don't really need it. $10 is nothing. So I just let her ship them. But the really fascinating part was that robot mentality was not done yet. Because when I let her ship them for $4.30 a piece or whatever, for these packages that should have been $1.60, when I let her ship them, right, first of all, I had to sit there and my ego was taking a hit. Why was my ego taking a hit? Because I know that every single other post office worker on earth, including the ones in her own post office, and I know that all the people who deliver my mail when I stamp it myself and put it in the mail slot, all those people are willing to ship my mail for $1.60, and she's shipping it for $4.30. It feels like my ego is getting a raw deal, right? Now, what's really important to separate here is in the actual world, I am losing $10, but as a robot, I can just say, I chose to come here. I know that there's a risk that I'm going to get this lady when I come to the post office, right? And so it's simply analytics, right? That there's a maybe 7% chance that I get this lady or 10% chance, and I got her. And so I acknowledge this scenario as one of the possibilities. And yet still my ego is burning, right? Because guess what could happen, okay? I could come home and be like, hey, babe, like, here's the receipt for the prints we shipped today. I got that lady at the post office, and she charged me $4.30 instead of $1.60. And then guess what would have happened? Preetha would have been like, why did you let her do that? Like, why didn't you talk about that? Or she might have been like, oh, that's so lame, or like, oh, whatever. And then more negative energy would have come in. And so one thing I'm learning, right, from my quote-unquote robot mentality is the best way to deal with negative energy is to ignore it. The greatest talent you can cultivate is to ignore destructive energy. And so let's just talk about this for like a hot second so that we really understand what we mean, right? Because this is something that's always been harrowing for me. I've always felt like the way to be a good person is never ignore anybody, to always try and empathize with anybody, to always, beat myself up at the price of others. Oftentimes I call this Dobby complex. That's another one of my favorite mental tricks, so we'll save that for another day. But anyway, I tend to always want to be open-minded, right? Because you think open-mindedness is always a good thing, okay? But the fascinating thing is where my open-mindedness has led me to in life is that I'm open-minded, completely open-minded to any solution to a problem, and I am completely open to the idea that letting go of all destructive critical energy is the best way to live life. That's just what I've found through my open-mindedness. And so what I mean by that is that if someone is gossiping or criticizing, it's so tempting instantly to think that your ego is involved. And if you were talking to Tony Robbins, the life coach guy, he'd say the reason that's so tempting is because you want significance. Because by complaining, you get significance, okay? So let's kind of take this full circle, right? So when I go to the post office, okay, and I go ship that package, that postal worker lady, one way she gets significance, like all of us, is through her career. And she knows, right? I'm smart enough to know this, that she knows that really my little flat mailers are a little bit too rigid, and they're technically not supposed to go in their mail sorter for regular mail, which is why she charges me for a package. Now, everybody else lets me do it. I've never had a piece of mail get harmed, so it's obviously okay. But she gets significance, right, from following the rules of her job, even if it costs me more and even if it's different than everybody else and I think she's wrong. Now, I get significance, right, from getting a low price on my stuff because I feel like I'm a good business person, okay? And so there you have two people with needs for significance, right? human needs for significance that are off, that are opposing. And that's why if you're into this whole, I can affect somebody else's mind, I need to change their mind, they need to change my mind, we can all mind control each other, we all exist in each other's heads. If you're into that, you can never solve those conflicts, right? You're always going to have an opposition of human significance, right? Because one person gets significance from thinking this, one person gets significance from thinking that, okay? And so the real way to get rid of these conflicts in your life is to be able to always generate significance for yourself without ever needing significance from somebody else. This is something that's just so on my heart right now, is like, how can I have 100% significance for myself without needing it from anybody else? Because if I don't need significance from anybody else, then I can just deal with the real world like everybody else is a robot in charge of their own significance as well. And I can just be the nicest person ever, right? Because to wrap it all up, right, and show you that treating people like robots is not callous, okay, is not bad, is not negative, this is the thing that really puts it over the top for me, is being nice to people is the way you get a better result, right? I'm saying people are like robots. We're all programmed to a certain set of reactions, right? And we all wake up ourselves to a certain extent and get our free will. But what I'm saying is, if I go to that post office lady and yell at her and I think she's a robot, like, I don't care about her feelings, yelling at her is only going to create a more negative scenario for me, right? It might make the other post office workers want to charge me more. It might make her want to charge me more. I'm going to see her frown. That's going to make me want to frown because of my mirror neurons, right? There are all these reasons why being mean to people is logically ineffective, okay? And so if you want to understand this warped, twisted way that we all end up being mean to each other, where all friendship drama comes from, where all gossip comes from, where all workplace conflict comes from, where all family conflict comes from, where everything comes from, right? It comes from, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, but I am saying I'm growing at it. It comes from the place where we think that our significance comes from other people seeing our significance inside of our head, right? Meaning if I think I am just the smartest parable teacher and like my robot message is the best message ever, then if nobody watches it, right? Or if nobody watches my YouTube recording, I might lose significance in my head if I believe that way. But if my significance comes from, hey, like I see myself as kind of God's intern. I'm here to just share love and be kind, right? Every day, and every day at 9:15 and at 9:20 and at 10 and at 2 and at 4 and at 8, I'm going to share these messages of love and help people. I have significance whether 0 people see this live or not. And to be clear, like when I'm starting right now, the average viewer count is probably less than 1 because I'm doing this during the day on a work day. So it's not like I'm starting with a ton of viewership, right? And yet I still have my professional mental health 101 logo, right? My program going on. I have my whole schedule up. I have good lighting up here. I'm growing and growing. But the only reason I'm able to grow and flourish is because I see everybody else as this beautiful little human robot. And that's now how I see people, is that I'm capable of experiencing amazing love and connection with humans, which is amazing, right? It's unlike anything else. And I'm also capable of getting the results I want in life. And it just so happens that the best way to interact with humans is always to be nice, okay? But to be nice, you have to let go of the idea that you can mind control somebody else, right? You're not responsible for anybody else's sadness, right? If you do something mean to somebody else, you're responsible for the physical consequences of that action, but you're not actually responsible for their sadness. They can choose to react however they want, right? If somebody else does something to me, if somebody else punches me, they're responsible for the physical consequences of that because I couldn't control them punching me. But I'm responsible for whatever that means to me on the inside, okay? And so once you get that, you got to come at it logically, but that the logic shows, right? Once you're in robot mind, the logic shows the best way for everyone to exist is to be loving and happy because we all exist better that way. We perform better. We get more. We have abundance. We're all better off, right? Once you realize that, that's the real gift of technology in 2020 and beyond, is that we all have the potential to create such ridiculous abundance in the world that is just unreal. So anyway, guys, that is my message for today. That's the parable. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, take a quick bathroom break, and then I will be right back. I'm going to leave the live stream up, and I'll be right back in a minute to go through some self-therapy on things like this, which is going to be super cool. So feel free to hang around if you're interested, but that concludes the parable portion of